Hadi, a couple of episodes ago, you mentioned a race you were going to be doing, a 2-dayer, no less.
Yep, a gravel event with a catchy name, El Gravelero. It was put on by good friend Sam Ames, who also organizes the Rock Cobbler in Bakersfield. It's a February event, so mark your calendars. Rock Cobbler, good event. El Gravelero, though, was 94 miles. I think it was about 8,000 feet of climbing, with the star of the show, the Eugene grade, which averaged about 13% over a couple miles and included sections above 20%. Yikes. Yeah, it was hard.
Wow.
And the day after, we had a fun ride planned for our good friend Neil Shirley at Envy, so that was the 2-dayer. In between those two rides, Fatty, well, let's just say we had some late-night adult activities.
So some opportunities there to test your recovery strategies.
Oh, yeah, you bet. Which is why, in addition to a tent and sleeping bag, I packed my Floyd's of Leadville balm and CBD drops, my favorites there. After Saturday's pummeling, I gave the muscles a good rub down and the head a little relief, and I was good to go come Sunday morning.
Well, thanks to the Floyd's of Leadville for that. And they're, of course, our presenting sponsor at floydsofleadville.com. Whether you're enjoying post-season races or hitting the CX or gravel racing hard like Hadi is, the benefits of CBD as well as the Friends of Leadville podcast go on. Just use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on your first 2 orders.
And thanks again, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring the show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. This is season 2, episode 27 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country.
And this episode, we are talking with Canyon pro racer Jeremiah Bishop. He is the holder of one of the 5 fastest times ever recorded in the Leadville 100. He is also a super gear nerd and a guy who has incredible depth of knowledge about training and racing. He is a coach, and we are, of course, very excited to say a very frequent contributor to our show.
Yeah, one of the highlights of the season in this show was getting Jeremiah's insights, both in our regular show and the live show we did in Leadville this year.
Oh, it sure was. And we're excited now to hear his story of his race this year. But first, we want to give a shout out and thanks to our sponsors for this show.
Yeah, let's start with the feed. They fueled us through the whole season and, in fact, continue to fuel us as Fatty and I are continuing to race into the autumn with Morton Drink Mix. Be sure to go to thefeed.com and use the code Leadville15 for a 15% discount on Morton Drink Mix and gels.
Yeah, and Shimano. Hadi, whether I am riding XT-Di2 or the new XTR drivetrain, I have the best, most confident shifting I have ever had on my bike right now. It is quick, it is clean, and it shifts under any load. I swear it does. Multiple shifts up or down. I know that my drivetrain is not something I have to worry about. Head on over to bike.shimano.com to learn more.
Banjo Brothers has also been with us since the very beginning of the show, and we're big fans of their tough, practical, and affordable bags. Get 15% off your saddlebag, commuter bag, frame bag, phone wallet, and other bike bags. Go to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites.
And finally, Envy. I have 4 mountain bikes, and Envy wheels, stems, bars, and seat posts are on every single one of them, and that is no coincidence. I trust their incredible strength, the lightness of their components, the way they look so nice. Really, I just like everything about their premium bike wheels and components. Check them out at envy.com.
Again, big thanks to all this season's sponsors of Leadville, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. And now, let's welcome our guest and regular contributor to this show, Jeremiah Bishop. Round of applause from everyone.
Yay!
From Leadville, from coast to coast.
Nice.
There he is. You're in Virginia, right? Do I have your state right? West Virginia, Virginia?
Yes, Virginia. So I live in Harrisonburg, Virginia, the cycling capital of Virginia. It is bike riding distance from the start of the Shenandoah 100, one of the older 100-mile National Series races. So I've actually ridden my bike to the start of that race from my house. But we also have hosted a bunch of big races like the World Cup downhill at Massanutten Ski Resort, the World Cup cross country, which just took place like 4 weeks ago at Snowshoe, just across the state border. And it is a lesser known hotspot for road and mountain biking.
And you have the Alpine Loop Gran Fondo, right?
Yeah. So we just had our event just 2 weeks ago. It was the 9th annual event. It is a big, nasty ride that basically encompasses 2 states, multiple municipalities, and goes from the small college town where I live, Harrisonburg, through the Shenandoah Valley, up and over massive line of mountains, and into West Virginia, into the sleepy backwoods of what most would call the middle of nowhere, but I call the middle of somewhere very special. And then we get people back over the mountain, hopefully. And it's a big one. And then, that's a hardcore training route that I've been doing for a long time, and just something I was hoping to share. And I linked up with Bob Hess that runs Prostate Cancer Awareness Project, and he was looking for an event to help get the word out for men over the age of 40. Eldon, Hadi, how old are you?
Yeah, 53.
55.
Right. Do you guys get your PSA tested?
No, I have not.
You should.
I will.
So prostate cancer caught early is very treatable. If you catch it later, it is a big problem, or can be a big problem. And so that's the whole point of the Alpine Loop Gran Fondo's Charity Connection to Prostate Cancer Awareness Project. So they have multiple tools, and it's part of a larger group called Cancer Journeys. So it's a really cool charity that just sort of friend wanted to get that message out, and our event was coming together, and he really put the fire under my butt to actually get this thing together. My wife runs the event, and now it's become close to 1,000 people, and all these sponsors, and all these different route links and jerseys, and a real community that kind of thrives on its own now. It's gotten to be such a fun time. We've had Joe Dombrowski, who raced for Team EF and actually beat me at Leadville one year, to Ben King, who races for Dimension Data, some World Tour locals. We had Eddie Anderson, who won last year, who races for Axion, Hagen Bermans, but comes from a mountain bike background. And this year's title went to Ben Wright, U.S. National Hill Climb Champion and hotshot rider for Team CCB. So, it's kind of interesting. The road and mountain background that I have is kind of part of that eclectic mix that I think helps make me pretty competitive at 100-mile races. So
well, I'm glad you brought up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up geography, Jeremiah, because I was thinking about this afternoon when we were talking about having you on. Is that training and how folks? One of the great things about being at the finish line at Leadville, because that's what you get to do if you don't actually race Leadville, you get to stand there at the finish line, which is what I got to do, is you see the finishers cross and the towns they're from. And, like 7 out of 10 of them are like, and from Boulder, Colorado, or from Boise, Idaho, or even Arizona or California. These are the finishers you're hearing crossing the finish line predominantly, especially the faster bunch, and with good reason. I mean, those riders, first of all, are closer to Leadville than people out east. And second of all the big mountains are basically in the western United States, and it's tougher for folks on the eastern side of the country to get to simulate that type of climbing that they're going to be met with at Leadville. Conversely, the folks I talked to who said they had trouble at Leadville, not all of them, but a lot of them say, oh, I was from Texas, or I'm from Florida, or I'm from Georgia, or the Southeast somewhere where they struggle to find the proper climbing. So tell us what Jeremiah Bishop, first of all, give us kind of a thumbnail on your training and what you're able to do out east and what you would suggest to people who cannot find the kind of climbing they need to do well at Leadville.
Yeah, it's a great topic, Hadi. And interestingly, my area has some massive climbs. The climb that we had in the Alpine Loop Gran Fondo up until 2 years ago, it was a little too hard for a road bike event. And it's part of it's in the Shenandoah 100. Well, the fastest known time on it is 44 minutes. So if you're familiar with the Strava on Columbine, about the same length of time, close to 3,000 vertical gain on the biggest climbs in this area. But yeah, most places on the East Coast don't have that. You do have that in New England in the Presidential Range. You do have that in North Carolina, and in fact, some even bigger climbs in North Carolina and Tennessee. However, most people, I think, have struggles with the elevation. So I have a training plan that several people used for Leadville 100 this year. And I've had some really good success between this year and last year with that from my clients. And it's been really cool to see where they come from. So a little tidbit of knowledge, some of the best finishers from non-elevation states come from Texas. And, you know, some people are scratching their heads, but, you know, there's a lot of people who are escaping the heat of Texas during that time of year to come up to Colorado. That's one factor. Mm-hmm. The other factor is heat is actually very good at challenging your oxygen carrying capacity. And it's very good similar trigger to altitude
simulation. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It triggers some similar adaptations. And so there's some pretty cool articles out there about heat shock proteins and what they do and some of the similarities they have in their effect on, your oxygen delivery. So it's pretty cool to, see riders from lower elevations do pretty good. Actually, this year was so bad I can actually talk about 2015 for just 1 second before we dive into my perpetual suffering that took place this year. But I have the fastest American time at Leadville, and I live at 1,400 feet.
Nice.
So 6 hours and a few seconds.
So I think the moral of the story is if you don't have hills or mountains near you, you probably have heat. Embrace the heat. Go out there and ride in the heat, and it's going to have at least a similar reaction. You're going to have a similar reaction.
It's helpful. It's helpful. I also will sometimes do intermittent hypoxic training, but number one, the most important thing is to get there early. Both of my best performances, or all of my best performances, are when I've had at least a week to 10 days at high elevation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about this year. And I know we kind of almost don't want to for you, but the fact is, I mean, your terrible year is, I would say, all but 12 people's very best possible time, right? And so, last time we were together, we were doing the live Leadville podcast show, and it was you and Floyd and Dave Z, and you were the guy who sort of kept us at least near the rails, which we appreciate. But that was, of course, not the only thing you were doing in Leadville. Tell us about the couple of days before the race and your expectations for the race.
Well, I kind of had the expectations of being competitive. I didn't really underestimate how much work, I'd have to do before the event. But the sensations were really good. Just 10 days, not 10 days, I guess it's 2 weeks ahead of that, I broke the course record at the Off-Road Assault on Mount Mitchell. And that's a pretty similar event. It's 10,000 feet of climbing in about 55 miles. So it's a ton of climbing. Western North Carolina goes up to about 5,500 feet and, smashed it. Won the race by a staggering gap of almost 18 minutes against a competitive field. and won the broke the course record of this 20-year-old event by 6 minutes. So I'm not saying I was thinking I was going to win, but I thought for sure I was going to, hit the ground running. I had a really good run in. But alas, sometimes you never know until you go. And so I was cautiously really hoping for a special day out there. But sometimes you just have to take it and, take your lumps, so to speak. I mean, that's bike racing. And, it was really fun. We had a good time at the podcast. I really was pleased with the audience there. They really seemed to get a kick out of it. And so many people who are coming from all over the world, quite frankly, to do that event, to do Leadville 100. That it's it's kind of got this interesting chemistry. It's a culmination of its parts. It's a culmination of all the people from all walks of life that are really building up to this pinnacle event. It's like Ironman. And, the people who do Ironman aren't doing necessarily Olympic distance 70.3 triathlons or sprint triathlons or Xterras. They're kind of their own, thread. Yeah, so it's really kind of a neat chemistry there. So in any case, back to the day or days leading up to Leadville. So my role is new. So I'm not racing for Toe Peak Ergon. The team folded at the end of last year. It was rebranded as Canyon Toe Peak. And Canyon has a ton of irons on the fire with the SRAM women's team, with Katusha, with Movistar, with Triathlon, with their cross-country mountain bike superstars. Pauline Ferdinand-Prevot just won world championships, and Matthew Vanderpool, who is absolutely on fire. And so that team came to a close, the one that sort of came out of Toe Peak Ergon. And this year I'm on with a different role as basically an athlete ambassador. What is that, you say? Well, basically it's, racing and doing my own program, but really focusing on North America. And Canyon USA and Canyon North America are really hitting the ground running. They're doing fantastically well. They've got, of course, fantastic bikes and great prices. But yeah, it's a really young company if you look at the pillar, at least of the US Canyon. And so, I had done some event work with them previously when they first launched in the US. And the opportunity came along that they needed someone to help not only, manage Canyon's East Coast demo and events program, but also still pretty fast at racing bikes. So
yeah, I guess that's why this role is why I saw you the day before the race, Friday, in the expo, actually fitting a woman for a new bike. You were there taking her data, her measurements, discussing her bike. Fratty, this was the day before the race. A contender in the Leadville Trail 100 is helping somebody get fit for a bicycle.
Hey, well, I was trying to help out. That's my nature, and I love helping people. And it's it's part of the balance. And I was there anyway, so it's great that I got to help her steer. They've got this perfect position system, which is really cool. You guys should check it out. Basically, you input your measurements, and it pops out which bike you should fit. And it's model dependent. But the thing is, it gets you very, very close and sort of takes out some of the guesswork. Obviously, buying a bike online is, if there's one challenge, it's, knowing the fit, knowing the geometry, right, and knowing how it's going to ride. So Canyon has met that challenge with a lot of great resources and tools, but also event presence on the ground. And I'm part of that. Kathy Pruitt from the West Coast team is part of that. And we're doubling down on our efforts next year to make sure that we get more bikes in front of people so that they can ride them, feel them, and, actually, see what the bikes are all about
So Jeremiah, first, it's too bad that Canyon has such a bad ambassador, and you just practically refuse to talk about their product. It's just awful for them. No, you were awesome, and it really was. It was a lot of fun. You and I did a Q&A together out there in there, and you were standing out there for hours before. But it had to have impacted your race day, is kind of what I'm thinking. But let's go ahead and get to that race day. Let's go to the start line and tell us how your day went.
Well, the start, I felt pretty good. I think the being at the expo and being at the venue is sort of a coin toss, whether or not it's going to really affect the race. And sometimes I feel great, and yeah, it's just a day hanging out, as long as I'm staying hydrated and eating enough. And everything leading up to the event seemed to be coming together great. I had a great chat with Lachlan Morton just before his race, put on the Facebook Live a little bit, and just chatting with him a little bit about his mountain bike endeavors and doing the Colorado Trail. Alex Howes, we have a mutual friend, and Ben King, and so we were chatting a little bit there. And yeah, the mood was light, and it's always good to cut the stress with some chatting and talking, because you can get pretty nervous before big events, or at least it's sort of hit and miss. This one though, I was pretty relaxed, which is good for me. If I don't care too much, it's ideal. If I've got a little bit of edge, but not too much. And I think the race seemed to start pretty well, but on the first climb, man, I just felt like a sack of bricks. I'm not kidding. I got dropped on the first climb, and I'm like, well, okay, it's going to come around. I linked up with Ted King a little bit. Ted was also struggling. Ted and I were...
Why do you think you got dropped?
I don't know, because I wasn't pedaling hard enough. Yeah, it's...
Well, I mean, you're a fantastic climber normally. I wasn't meaning that at all disparagingly. I mean, as someone who generally kills it in the climb, for you to get dropped is, surprising, and there must be something behind it.
Yeah, I definitely felt really stiff, and was just a little off the mark. I did a big ride that Wednesday. I rode from Breckenridge over to Leadville, and the pass was covered with snow that went up from Alma. And I'm trying to call Josh Tostado, and I'm like, Josh, he'll know if this, is a glacier that I'm trying to climb up to and cross over. And the lady at the store is like, no, honey, you're not going over that pass. No way. It looks like a glacier.
What was the makeup of the group going up Keevans? Were all the pros still there?
Oh, yeah.
Was it, how big of a group was there?
Yeah, it was a pretty chill start. We even had a tandem duo. Up there with us, some of the SRAM guys. So it was pretty chill up until that point. It was actually quite a relaxed pace. And
who's driving the pace at that point?
Lachlan. Yeah, Lachlan, he likes to stand up and get on it, and he weighs about as much as a bag of rice. So, he's going at it and, getting the pace up there. And, we had probably 12, 15 people at that point. And so this is like reliving a nightmare. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to me, Hottie?
That's right. We'll talk about other people then. Had you ever heard of Quinn Simmons going into this race?
I had heard of Quinn.
Had you?
Yeah, I had heard of Quinn Simmons, and I had a good chat with him after the race, a few days afterward. So a talent for sure.
For sure. And so he looked fresh too, right there on lead. I mean, I know he ran into some tacks pretty early on, but
yeah, I was actually with him on the first descent. He pulled over. I linked up with Payson for a minute or two, and Payson and I rode together all the way to the base of Columbine.
And so, at what point did you split apart? And were you at that point? Is that when you left, got ahead of Payson, or you dicing back and forth?
Yeah, there was misery between the first climb and when I linked up with Payson. When I got dropped on the second climb, I played the yo-yo of hell. I'm telling you, like I'm in it until I'm not in it. So, I mean, I fought to catch back on. Ted, he wasn't worth very much. I can say this now because he went and won Steamboat Gravel the next week. But yeah, he just, I thought maybe he'll pull through and help me catch up. And no, I was kind of by myself, caught right on the bottom of the road descent, right into the base of the next climb. I'm like, okay, I'll be good. I just got to, recover and kind of wake up a little bit. Got dropped again, and then it's Payson and I descending like madman, trying to catch back up. And everything I could do to descend, and I got dust in my face, the light's really low, it's hard to see, and I'm even getting gapped off on the descent. I mean, I'm just taking it from the chin, one chin to the other, and I get down to the road, and Payson is like a minute ahead of me, just shaking my head like, oh, this is terrible. And so I put my head down and I'm chasing like mad. I catch Payson, and then I've got the aero bars on, little mini aero bars, so I'm moving pretty good on the flats still. And I claw my way back along with Payson to within sight of the main group. But according to my buddy, they were hitting it hard, and so they were pushing pretty fast at that point. And man, we caught on right as we hit the single track descent. And this is, probably halfway between Pipeline and Twin Lakes. So it's pretty far into the race to be pushing that hard solo. I was basically going flat out because, you got to try until you can't. And that's kind of the way I race. That's the way I race and lose. That's also the way I race and win. There have been instances this year, like Grand Fondo, New York, the GFNY championships, where I was dropped. I chased, even with someone on my wheel, caught the lead group and was able to turn it back on after I recovered. This time I played, that same game and, gave myself the chance to do a good race and paid greatly for it. I mean, you want to talk about explosion. I'm talking sky high. Imagine if you rode across the flats between Powerline and Columbine as fast as you could, closing down a minute gap on the lead group who was obviously working together. I went as hard as I could. I caught them, tried to recover. I had literally like 15 minutes, 10 minutes to recover while they were, regrouping, and then we hit the climb, and then it was, all hell broke loose. Yeah, it was pretty ugly. I got dropped on that climb, a little bit less bad. I was coming around a little bit at the bottom, and then, I had to let go about 3/4 of the way up, and the engine was just, I was just redlined. There was nothing I could do. And then up toward the top, Quinn Simmons caught me, and then I didn't really recognize him. I heard the name a couple times, but he's just wearing a sort of generic black skin suit, and he's like, "Come on, man, let's try to catch him." And I'm like, that sounds wonderful, guy, but you have fun with that. I am going to lick my stem. I am just dying. Man. So it was really impressive. And it was neat though to see firsthand the gap. At that point, the gap to the front was, it ballooned open to like 5 or 6 minutes probably, like by the top of the climb. But he ended up closing that gap on the way back, sitting on and resting a bit. And then beating those guys in the sprint for second place. It was amazing. Really an impressive result. But I know where he was. It's the all or nothing. It was the same place I was. F it. I basically am out of the race, so I might as well just go full gas, try to catch up, and maybe I'll get 5th. That's probably what was going in his mind. He's like, maybe I'll grab a Strava or two. Maybe I'll catch the lead group, and that'll be a success. And then he also put in a good, kick at the end. And, if you can if you can race when your back's against the wall, I think it says a lot about your ability to race during, all races. And if you look at Quinn's races, he had another really good race in Europe where he crashed or something, and it was one of the Junior Nations Cup. Raining, nasty, goes through the field and wins the race. That's what it takes. And looking at talent and looking at athletes that I've worked with over the years, and sort of case studies of athletes that I haven't worked with, but, come through and end up making it at the top level. One thing they have in common, the really, really talented top athletes, is a mental toughness and grit, but not just grit, but savvy, ability to get their way out of a tough spot. And Quinn seems to have that in spades. So, I was talking with him, and he had several prospective teams interested, and I was just trying to give him some advice. A lot of teams right now are looking at him as an investment, looking at him as a potential cash cow, down the road. And the teams are not always looking out, and the agents surely aren't always looking out for the athlete. And so, from one athlete to another, I was saying, hey, think about the long term, think about the teams that, are going to allow you to grow at a gradual pace and at a consistent pace, teams that are clean, and really hold highly the ethics of, doing it right. And then also just looking at, the composition of the riders in the team, and, how you're going to fit in, and having an English speaking team, for example, I think is a pretty nice thing, for a first year rider like that. So, it'd be interesting to see where he goes.
18. He is 18. And I don't know, is he our Matthew Vanderpool? I mean, he might be that, right? Is he that good? He's
very good. He probably leans, his riding style seems to be classics oriented, one day,
sure,
but exceptional depth. Obviously, you can't have a performance like he did at Leadville without exceptional depth, and obviously he proved that at the World Championships. It's just a really, really good, team race. And he delivered the goods.
Right. Well, Howard Grotz won for the third time in a row, but it seems like all anybody could talk about was Quinn Simmons, 18-year-old guy, comes back from 4 or 5 tacks and flats and gets second place and beats 2 EF guys in the process. And yeah, it was an amazing day. Now, Jeremiah, the last time this podcast audience heard from you during our live show, I was pressing you pretty hard about what bike you would be riding, because we were floating the idea that the Canyon Grail could see some Leadville dirt. Now, I don't think you rode that bike. What did you ride in the end? And does a gravel bike still circle around in your head about potentially being entered into the Leadville 100?
I think someone could win the race on a gravel bike, honestly. They would have to be just really, really good. But if you had multiple riders deciding to ride the gravel bikes, then you actually would have almost like a group effect. You'd be climbing the climbs really fast, lose some time, but that group would need to be running ahead of the mountain bike group at portions of the race in order for that to work. That's just my take on it.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So what were you on the August? What was it? 13th?
So I was on, so typically over the last few years, I raced the Exceed. So I'm actually looking at it right now. I'm looking at the 2015 prototype Exceed that's not supposed to be hanging on a hook in my basement. But it is a piece of history. It is my favorite bike in my collection of, bikes. And obviously that 6-hour mission kind of reminds me of the FKT, Lee Kipchong did for the marathon just this last week. We put together such an effort to put that race down. as a team effort. And most of the finish times in the last few years have been 6:15 ish, right? You tell me.
Yeah. Not even really close.
I mean, it's a massive difference.
Yeah. 6:20. I think Todd did 6:20 the following year and won, and it's been a 6:15. Nothing that's even really sniffed Licata's record time.
Yeah. And because we were working together, I was 6 hours and 40 seconds. You know, I even took a little wrong turn on one of these little like pull outs on the way back. You know, it looks like the road, but it's a push out for the erosion push out. So I kind of got going down the wrong direction. But yeah, case in point, that was a special, very special ride. If I have the fourth fastest time, almost tied in the sprint for third or fourth fastest time, to this day. And yeah, there's a lot of racing and a lot of people that go to that, and a lot of top riders and Team EF this year. And man, it's kind of surprising. But back to the bike.
So that's the rig.
Year,
you rode that rig then for this year?
The Lux. And the Lux has been my favorite bike for the last couple of years, just because it is almost as light as the Exceed, and pedals incredibly out of the saddle. So, I mean, once you get over 4 hours, man, a full suspension bike, I mean, your back feels so much better. Your hands feel better. I mean, you know what it's like to ride in pain. Like if you're in misery, it's pretty hard to concentrate on pushing down. So that was a big part of it, and the bike definitely, that had nothing to do with my result. If you looked at the lead group, I think most of the riders were on full suspension bikes, right?
In any case, I think it's worth noting that this time that you are talking about, that you don't feel, it doesn't reflect what you are truly capable of, is still 6 hours and 47 minutes. And that is a remarkably fast time. And that puts you in 11th place overall in the 2019 Leadville 100, which is for most pros, a dream time. You're in pretty rarefied company when that kind of time and that kind of placing does not equate a dream day for you. Right?
It's all about putting together the race you can do. So it wasn't that
right.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad, and I actually rallied pretty good once I got my head out of the gutter. Literally, I would have dropped out if Charlie, he had the Canyon Sprinter, and he was supposed to give me a time check on the way back, and I guess he, I don't know, took a wrong turn or got delayed, or maybe he thought I was already through. That's probably what happened. And I didn't see the van, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to see the van at some point, like right after Pipeline. I got my feet at Pipeline. I didn't see him at the corner on the road. You do these this sort of intersection. It's maybe 8 miles before the climb up power line, and he didn't show up. And I'm like, well, I guess I can't quit. Literally, I would have crawled in the van and laid down. I was having a massive headache.
He was hiding from you.
He probably knew better. Yeah, man, it was rough. I really thought I was getting some sort of meltdown physically. Some days, it's amazing. Your body just works like a machine. Everything's clicking, and your legs feel like pistons, just boom, 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 up and down, just on their own. And it's just awesome. And those are the days that keep me training and it kind of keep me, after it and keep dreaming. But this was not one of those. This was one of those days where it tests your mettle. Like I said, I literally, and you hear stories of people who are like, I had to quit. It just wasn't my day. And, this one, I got to thinking, I clearly remember thinking, what's going to go through the mind of the people who struggled worse than I did to finish this thing if I, bail at this point. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, even, high level pro riders will bail from this thing. If it's mechanical or if, a bad crash, but I just knew I had to give it a try, and if I have to crawl into the back of a truck and, bail, then I have to bail, but I'm going to keep pushing until, they push me in the back of an ambulance. That was my attitude. And so I was really glad to finish. And actually, it came around and, I got to a place where I could just deal with the headache and deal with this, way my body was feeling. And I started to feel better. And, it became like a long bike ride. When you do those crazy long adventure rides and then you're kind of like out there and enjoying it, even though it's tough. I kind of got to that point a little bit toward the latter part of Powerline. I said, you know what, this is really cool that I can do this. And that's where I left it.
Well, a Powerline, before you go any further, are you normally a Powerline cleaner? And how did it go this year? I mean, they regraded that lower section. What happened down there?
Oh, it was significantly more rideable. And I got offered some bacon. And it was a pretty amazing moment. I did make it without unclipping. So there's that.
I'm going to say that as all normal riders, normal citizen type riders eventually have a day like that or often have a day like that. It is actually really great to hear about a top level pro, one of the 5 fastest guys to ever do this race can have a day that felt hard and miserable and bad enough that if it had been convenient to quit, you might have. And that you didn't. That is really great. I mean, that's kind of what one of the things that Leadville is all about is staying on it when you don't feel like staying on it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I thought maybe if I can inspire someone to just suck it up and finish, then that's worth it. And also just for myself, it doesn't feel good to drop out. Yeah. It really feels easier at the moment, but it feels worse for like a week. So yeah, it was, I was just glad that I didn't make that call and finished it up. And yeah, I mean, it was great. You get the vibe at the finish line, you get to see people you haven't seen in a long time, and you kind of exchange war stories, and yeah, I mean, it makes it worth it.
So what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm back here putting my rock riding bike back together for the Massanutten Ring. And I promised I wouldn't talk about this because it's another kind of a sore topic. When you talk about bailing or quitting, a friend of mine, wanted to do this expedition ride. It's it's probably the most technical 71-mile trail. It's the most technical backcountry single trail that I can think of in America that's rideable. It's called the Massanutten Ring. Massanutten is an Indian name. And Massanutten Mountain is a north-south range that runs basically just west of DC, down the Harrisonburg. But the north end of it was George Washington's point of last stand should the British win the Battle of Yorktown. And George Washington surveyed a lot of western Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley of West Virginia. And he knew the terrain really well. But this rocky escarpment, this cauldron, this oblong, oval, volcano rim line is just the most terrible rocky hell you could think of for a trail. And it's been the site of a running race for the last 30 years. Well, get this, the running time is about an hour and 50 minutes faster than the bike riding time on the Massanutten Ring. Check it out on MTB Project or on Trail Forks. It starts near Front Royal, Virginia, and it is really, really effed up. Well, my buddy, was like, hey, I want to go and ride the ring. And I'm like, yeah, right. It's November, dude. And I was like, sure, I'll take you out there. And, I kind of joked because, I was like, well, whatever. We can just ride part of it or most of it or all of it. And it jackhammered the hell out of us. I fell on one section and put my leg between these two rocks and my body was still moving. So, of course, it ground my shin against this cinder block shaped rock. Pretty good cut on my shin and blood bleeding into my sock. My foot was wet from blood. I mean, it was just nasty. But, we were out there and we kept on going, and then we got rained on, and then riding these rock slabs in the rain. I mean, just imagine riding these tombstone shaped diagonal rocks in the wet. Just terrible. I mean, it was tricky, slow. You had to walk more than your normal amounts. So this thing's probably 98% rideable in the dry. That goes down to about 88% in the wet. If you are a crack technical rider, like a really, really good, Just Tostado rock rider. Yeah, man. So we got to about 14 and a half hours in, and it was 9 p.m. in mid-November. Gets dark at like 6:30 now. And this was like 12 years ago, man. And we bailed. We're like, well, our bodies are breaking down, our wrists are jackhammered, and it's unfinished business. And that was part of, in the back of my mind at Leadville and a lot of these races, I will finish. Now it's just hardwired into me. And so this Massanutten Ring, before I do any other expedition, I've got some expeditions lined up, but they're kind of in a queue. It's kind of this mental roadblock for me now. I tried to do it last fall. Check out my YouTube channel, In the Wheelhouse with Jeremiah Bishop. It's not a great YouTube channel. I own it. It's basically sort of low production, home video quality, but it's pretty fun stuff. It's kind of like stages of Breck Epic, winter training here in Virginia with some of the local pros. And then I brought my GoPro with me for our attempt last fall to ride the ring. Two other guys, Sam Skidmore and Charlie Snyder, have the current record at 16 or so hours. So there's a very small group of people that have finished this. 71 miles, right? No big deal. How hard could it be? But there are probably more people that have walked on the moon that have finished this ride. It is really messed up.
Well, I am looking forward to seeing the YouTube of your attempt. And I'm not going to say I'm certain finish because it sounds brutal. It sounds like no fun at all. But I'm looking forward to seeing your race or your report.
I might not get it this time, but I very well might because I've paid my dues, I think. Well, we'll see.
Make it and then come here and tell us about it. That's the plan. Say hi to George Washington, too, for us if you see him out there. Be nice. The first president. Be nice to run into him. All right, Fetty, let's wrap up Season 2, Episode 27 of the Leadville podcast presented by Floyd's of Leadville. Once again, thanks to Jeremiah Bishop for being along.
Yeah, and if you like our show, support it by giving us a 5-star rating and a review over at Apple Podcasts. Share it with your cycling friends, and be sure to support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate making the show possible.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the 2020 start line.
All right, that's a wrap. Team Toe Peak Argonne, crushing Leadville 100 2015, the world's fastest 100-mile mountain bike race, or dirt road race, or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, it's wicked fast. Sub 6 for 104 miles at 10,000 feet. So, I think I earned a beer.